know, I just think it's entertaining that humans have managed to convert something as untangible as a dream into a materialistic pursuit. Hello everybody, welcome to my channel if you are new, and welcome back if you are returning. My name is Maya, and today we will be talking about F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby. It's a classic. I'm sure you had to read it in school. The Great Gatsby, for a little synopsis, if you've never had the pleasure of indulging in this novel, follows a man named Nick Carraway. And Nick has recently moved to New York, to Long Island, and he wants to make it big on the stock market. And just down the street from him, kind of, on the east side of where he lives, is his cousin, Daisy, and her husband, Tom. And they're extremely rich. They live very opulent, lavish lives. And so does Nick's next-door neighbor, who is J. Gatsby.
I'm Gatsby.
A famous millionaire, but no one really knows how he got his money. It's very suspicious. It's very fishy. You see, every weekend, Gatsby will hold this extravagant party at his mansion. These parties were a big deal in New York. Anyone went to the parties, but no one was really invited. And it was very rare to actually see an appearance of J. Gatsby at one of his parties. At the end of the day, F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel is really an exploration of the American dream, what it means to have a dream, what it means to put everything into a dream, and whether or not what you give up along the way is worth what you reap in the end. Okay, the first thing I really want to dive into for this video is the pursuit versus the destination. I'm going to be very cat postery here and tell you that it is not the destination, but the journey. And I think this is very applicable still today. If you look at all of the videos of valedictorian speeches from like the last 5 years or so.
And I thought, that's it?
A lot of the ones that have gone viral have been valedictorians explaining why they would never recommend anyone try to be a valedictorian.
Maybe I was hoping that all of my problems would fade away in comparison to this amazing achievement.
At the end of the day, because during the pursuit of something, whether that's an award, a certain lifestyle, an amount of money, a person, in that pursuit, we create an idealized version of our fantasy. We put it on a pedestal. And because of that, the actual reaping at the end, the product, the end game, is not coming close at all to what you would have hoped it would be, because nothing can hold up to the expectations that people impose on them. In The Great Gatsby, this is discussed very in-depth in terms of Gatsby himself and the lengths he has gone to acquire this amount of wealth. J. Gatsby was born as James Gatz. I believe he was from North Dakota, ? He was born into a very poor family. They were farmers, and he knew from a very young age that he wanted to make something of himself by the Western definition of that phrase. He wanted to be rich. He wanted everyone to know his name when he died. He wanted his parties to be the most fabulous. He wanted to be top tier. Essentially, J. Gatsby, born James Gatz, morphed into a new person. He did a lot of illegal things to make money. He was a big part of the drinking culture during Prohibition. He had some affiliation with mob bosses. Because Gatsby has thrown so much of his life into his endeavor of becoming a rich, well-to-do person, when he becomes that person, it falls short of what he expected it would be. Despite the fact that he has all the riches and material objects that one could ever want to acquire, he doesn't have the one thing in his life that he truly wants, and that, my friends, is Daisy Buchanan. Part 2 of this video, we're going to be talking about Daisy Buchanan, her relationship with Gatsby, and love versus obsession. That's something that's not talked about a lot when this book is taught in schools, and I think it does a disservice to the book because it's a whole nother thematic idea that's really relevant today and that I think we should be discussing. Daisy was born incredibly rich. She kind of knew how her life would play out. She was very conventionally beautiful. In the Jazz Age, this was particularly important. There was a lot of emphasis on appearance and social standing, and she just kind of had a predestined plan for her life just based on her appearance and the family she was born into. However, a curveball is thrown in her life when she meets Jay Gatsby, who at this time in the novel was a soldier. He was invited to a party, and he fell in love with her immediately. They had a brief affair, and then Gatsby had to go back to war, and Daisy said she would wait for him, but alas, she did not. She ended up marrying Tom Buchanan, our favorite racist bigot. Now, something that I talked to my teacher and my classmates a lot about when we were reading this novel was whether Gatsby's relationship with Daisy would be defined as a loving relationship or an obsession. We talked a lot about the manic pixie dream girl trope. I don't love that term. It's become used instead of pointing out sexism to promote sexism, so it's difficult. But I believe that Daisy Buchanan is kind of the epitome of the manic pixie dream girl, and that she is the embodiment of every fantasy Jay Gatsby has ever had for a woman. She is everything he could have hoped for, but maybe she's not. Maybe that's just how he perceives her. Perhaps he's not seeing the actual person, but he's seeing the goddess he put on a pedestal, and that not only dehumanizes Daisy, but makes his relationship with her a little bit less loving and a little bit more obsessive. Something I think F. Scott Fitzgerald masterfully portrayed in this book was how society expects us to love, who we should be with, how we should play out our lives. And that is not only really obvious in Gatsby's relationship with Daisy, but also in some of the side plots. So something that I wondered is whether or not Gatsby would have fallen in love or had an obsession with, it's your call, with Daisy if society had not told him that she was the type of woman he should have fallen in love with. This also goes into Daisy. She clearly did have an affection for Gatsby, at least in some point in their timeline together, and yet she married Tom Buchanan. And that's likely because that is the person society expected her to love and to marry. Tom Buchanan was a Yale graduate. I think it was golf, maybe it was polo, something. They don't play golf on horses. He was a big athletic figure in the Yale community. He kind of peaked in college, if you will, but he was just the conventionally handsome, really rich husband to have, and that is who Daisy ended up marrying, even though she loved Gatsby. This idea also plays into Tom's relationship, so Daisy's husband, his relationship with a woman named Myrtle. Myrtle was the wife of a mechanic, and she lived in New York City, and she happened to be Tom Buchanan's mistress. Of course, Tom is a horrible character. I'm not going to argue in any way that he is a good person, because he's absolutely not. But I wonder if he married Daisy because that's who society expected him to marry, and what if those constraints were raised or made a little bit less rigid. If he would have proposed to Myrtle, perhaps his life would have been completely different if societal expectations were not as they were in the 1920s and continue to be today. At the end of the day, what I think is most striking about Fitzgerald's commentary on relationships in the 1920s is the idea about what it means to care for a person as a person and to care for a person for what they provide you. Those are two incredibly different things. I think Marmee from Greta Gerwig's adaptation of Little Women said it best.
But do you love him? I care more to be loved. I want to be loved. That is not the same as loving.
Loving and being loved are not the same thing. And I think a lot of the time people accept being loved without loving because that is what society expects them to do. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. Wait, I think he had glasses in the movie. Let's fix that. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg. The eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckelberg also inspired a question in my heart, which I thought I would pose, and that is, who is judging you and whose judgment matters? Now, In the traditional sense of how Dr. T.J. Eckelberg's eyes are interpreted as the eyes of God, that's a pretty straightforward answer. But I was wondering if perhaps this novel is instead reflecting on the way society judges you, the way society dictates your life, and the way you comply with what they say. For example, these eyes watched as Jay Gatsby became Jay Gatsby. He was James Gatz, the poor farmer boy, and he worked his way up, often illegally, often swindling people, and using others as leverage to reach the position he is in today, and by today, I mean 100 years ago. Yes, those eyes, metaphorically, could have possibly been judging him, but what if those eyes were the reason he did it in the first place? What if those eyes represent society and society's vision for the way life ought to be lived? Part 4.
The American Dream.
We touched on this briefly with the pursuit versus destination idea at the beginning, but I'd like to go into it a little bit further. So what is the American dream?
Define the American dream.
According to Google Dictionary, the American dream, the ideal by which equality of opportunity is available to any American, allowing the highest aspirations and goals to be achieved. Now, this is where it gets tricky. What are those aspirations and goals? What should they be, and what have they been in the past? In The Great Gatsby, it's very clear that F. Scott Fitzgerald sees the American dream as a very materialistic endeavor. It became a lot more about the car you drove, how much alcohol you could afford, the parties you threw, and a lot less about being a truly, genuinely happier person. This is an idea that persists really heavily in American culture today, and I think in a lot of cultures around the world. That's like, think about the 1950s, the whole fast food, car craze, the suburban house with the white picket fence and the neatly trimmed lawn, and the housewife, the trophy wife. It's all a part of what we are told an ideal life should look like and our pursuit of that life. Because we place what we want and what we expect out of our lives on such a high pedestal, it never lives up to what we want it to be. And we know that. That is the funny part. F. Scott Fitzgerald's entire point in this book is talking about the hypocrisy of humanity and the paradox of this dream. We think that when we acquire the next new material, we'll be that much happier, but in fact, we're less happy, so then we buy more, and it's just this eternal cycle. And what's so entertaining is, despite the fact that we know that life is not made up of the new iPhone. It's made up of the people we surround ourselves with, the experiences we have with those people. Even though we know that, we still pursue really, really, really materialistic dreams. Another problem with the American dream is we're often told there's only one way to accomplish it, and that is the work really hard, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and go to college, and get a white-collar job, and support your family, and then retire when you're 65, and relax on your front porch until you die. First of all, that's a really privileged outlook on what the ideal life should be. Even the phrase, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, to me is incredibly problematic, because what if you don't have bootstraps to begin with, you know? What if you just have some cheap-ass Converse shoelaces? There's a lot of privilege embedded within The Great Gatsby, and I know that's not what the book is about, but I think it's something we need to talk about if we're going to continue to teach it in schools today. I want to go to a film school that I probably can't afford and make very little money for a really long time and work really, really hard with very little payoff, because I love making movies and I love telling stories, and that is what I'm passionate about. However, I'm not blind to the fact that a lot of my decisions are dictated by society. We don't live in a little bubble. However nice that would be, we are influenced in every facet of our lives by society. And I think this novel, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, does a really stellar job at portraying that. It's been 100 years since this novel was released. Pretty much 100 years. 2022, I believe, will be 100 years. But nonetheless, this book still holds up really well, and it still asks a lot of questions that are important in society today. As the American or human dream continues to morph and change, it's important to recognize how those dreams operate within society, how it's important to be true to yourself and to the things that really matter before you're true to materialistic endeavors, and to make sure that life is what you want it to be, not what you're told it ought to be. Thank you for tuning in today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would recommend you check out this here novel. It is pretty darn good. I liked it. It's a good one. Alrighty, everyone. I will see you on Thursday. I hope you're having a stellar May so far, and I will see y'all then. Bye-bye.